Hey everybody, it's Magic Prepper. I'm out here on the range with a Henry Big Boy revolver and .357 Magnum, just kind of taking it easy and testing out the gun. Henry sent it to the channel and I kind of wanted to get a feel for it. And at first I was hesitant because I'm like, there's not a lot I can do with this particular gun. It's very rudimentary. It has channel style sights on the top of the receiver, as well as a front sight that looks removable, but I haven't seen any other replacement options for it. And of course, me being me, I immediately wanted to find out if I could put an optic on it or do anything else weird with it to make it more modern. But the more I shoot it, the more I can appreciate the simplicity of this gun, because it brings a level of calm and tranquility to the equation that you don't get with other firearms. And then you can apply that peace of mind to the rest of your preparedness if you really break things down in a simplistic way. And the simplistic aspect of this particular gun means that once you have it, like, you're done. If this was your pistol, there's nothing else to do with it because you can't. You can get a holster for it and you can get ammo for it. And that's not a bad place to be, in all honesty. And of course, I'm working with this firearm to get some ideas for preparedness related concepts in the future. But in general, I like shooting it, but I also like that there's nothing else I need to do with it. And I started thinking about that while I was out here, and I just wanted to share some thoughts with you all because honestly, things can get very complicated very quickly when it comes to preparedness. And you can always do more and go more expensive and go more complicated, but it doesn't always equate to practicality. That's one of the things that I struggle with personally, so I figured a lot of you might as well. Firearms are a great example for this because it's very easy to correlate. If I was to buy a Glock 17, let's say, instead of something like this, which I think is obviously, not a bad idea, but all I'm trying to say is that my immediate thought process then is, okay, I want to get an optic for it, I want to get a light for it, I need to get a holster for it, maybe I need to get a couple of other options, right? And things start to add up very quickly, not to mention all the additional magazines, all the additional spare parts and everything else that you might want. And so what generally is a relatively affordable option compared to its reliability and track record becomes expensive pretty quickly, which takes up resources from all the other things that you have going on, like your food supply, your water supply, your backup power supply, right? All the other resources that we need to stash away or work on in the sense of creating some level of productivity or sustainability regarding preparedness. And everything is a give or a take, unless obviously you're wealthy, where, spare no expense is the motto. That's a different situation, but that's not the majority of us, I assume. So if you can break things down more simplistically and keep things reasonable, then it allows more resources for all of the different things that we know are important that we certainly may need at some point in the future. So yes, rice and beans, they're boring. It would be a very atrocious diet in the sense of nutrition and flavor for a long-term emergency, but they get the job done and you won't starve, but you'll have the calories required without spending a ridiculous amount of money on, freeze-dried food or any of the more exotic food storage options. Hold on, we're gonna shoot this because I can already tell people are getting upset that I haven't yet. So let's just shoot it a little bit here just for fun. It's just 38 special right now. It's also getting very dark, which is why maybe getting a new front sight would be nice, but hey, like I said, that's my mind and the way my brain works, and then I start getting all concerned about things, realizing that hitting a 6-inch steel plate in darker conditions with sunglasses on is maybe not a realistic, practical application of what this would be for, right? A man-sized target, on the other hand, different situation. In fact, real quickly, because I just have ammo on the ground. That's normal, right? This is America. Sometimes you just find ammo on the ground. That's how it works in video games, right? Man-sized target, which you can't see, but there's a full-size IPSC over here. Really not an issue, right? So Yeah, no flinch. Feel pretty good about that. Now, going back to the simplicity equation, because simplistically is a whole different situation. When you apply this concept to everything else, it just makes things a lot easier. Your food storage can get bigger for less money and still provide you with the requirements during a long-term emergency without having to break the bank or become more complicated. Because once you start adding in all these additional resources, more things are required generally in order for them to be efficient. And the same thing can be said about, water. Yes, having a water filter and a way to clean water is a great idea, but just storing water in a giant container is one of the easiest ways to make sure you have water, or even just having water bottles, right? And yes, there's a lot of other ways that you can start getting sustainable water supply, like having rain catchment systems or having some sort of a well, or understanding where bodies of water are nearby that you might be able to go and acquire and retrieve water from. Regardless, buying a bunch of water in bottles or storing a bunch of water in a big old tank is just the most basic and efficient way to do it without having to do anything crazy. So if you can break everything down to being simple, achieving a lot of your preparedness goals becomes a lot more, well, achievable. And so, look, I'm not trying to say that, this is really what you should have and all you need, right? Because, clearly I feel differently than that. That's not how I perceive things, as you can tell. I mean, I like having optics. I like having lights. I like having fancier things, let's just say, for those obscure situations where that might actually come into play. But if this is what you have, I don't see there being any issue with feeling good about it. I don't see there any issue being with the regards to the lack of accessories or any other levels of support, because you don't need it, because it limits you. And that limitation can be a blessing in some ways. So I guess all I was trying to say is, don't overcomplicate it if you're not in a position to do so. Because sometimes it feels like you have to, and I know that that can be an obstacle on its own. And if you always feel like, well, I have to just stack, a year's supply of Mountain House freeze-dried food, well, it's going to take a lot longer, a lot more resources, and a lot more energy, because, I consider energy and financial resources to be tied together, than it would to just get rice and beans, which would get you to that year's worth of food goal much, much faster while consuming less resources in the process, right? And so I think that's something that every so often, like personally, I need to recognize and maybe remember, because at times you are chasing that top of the line. You're chasing that complexity, right? You want that mesh system where you have drones flying transmitters all over your area in order to be able to maintain communications throughout an emergency situation. And you have your 40-foot antenna hooked up to your ham radio station in order to reach across oceans in order to talk to Europe, just in case there's an issue during a blackout scenario where we need to know what's happening to allies, right? Like, there's all kinds of things that can occur and that you can accomplish if you are willing to put the resources, time, and effort into it. But at the same time, it's not a good idea to forget that a pair of Motorola's with FRS frequencies programmed into them can sometimes be what you need and what works in an emergency. And sometimes that's the walkie-talkie that you can give to your wife or your husband or your family or relatives, and they'll actually know how to use, because turn to number 12 and press button. And that simplicity has a level of desire to it. Just like what this revolver does for me. I don't have to do anything to it. It doesn't cost me anything else now besides a holster and ammo. That's a kind of a nice place to be. Oh, one more second. Because, we do have floor ammo available, and who doesn't like floor ammo? I've heard it's some of the better variety of ammo. Now, we're going to go ahead and shoot another full cylinder of this revolver, because it's fun, and because I think that you've waited long enough for more gunfire. So, IPSC target. Plus, it's kind of fun to see the flash when it's a little bit of a low light scenario, which we're in right now. And yeah, Man-sized target, not an issue, you know. I can hit it. 6-inch steel plate, getting a little bit harder to see that blacked out front iron sight right now. Does that matter? I don't know. But you know what? Maybe this video doesn't even matter. This isn't a high effort production. This was just me being on the range saying, you know what, I have thoughts to share. And I appreciate you listening to them. And if you thought they were reasonable thoughts, let me know in the comments below. And if you are new here, I'm sorry that this is the first video you saw because usually there's way more of a format. But I still appreciate you anyway, and if you want to subscribe, I think that would be nice. Anything else you need from me, go to magicprepper.com. And besides that, it's going to be it for Magic Prepper.